All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Camera one.
Talent.
Ready, camera
Roll for record.
2,
1.
1. Roll for record.
Greetings and thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining us from Dallas, Texas is PJTV contributor Scott Ott. And here in Los Angeles, stand-up comic Steven Gruser. Now it's time to go to the top of the rundown. And we begin with Mr. Scott Ott.
Well, breaking news this week, Eric Holder's Department of Justice finally breaks loose with its 102-page report on Ferguson, Missouri in the wake of the Michael Brown shooting, and the Attorney General referred to it as a searing report. It flags institutional racism and constitutional violations, shows that cops treated blacks with disdain and even violence, resulting in racially disproportionate stops, harassment, and arrests of black citizens. Now, Michael Brown's death, their separate 82-page report found, did not involve prosecutable civil rights violations on the part of Officer Darren Wilson. But Eric Holder's report nails the local justice system for failing to crack down on, among other things, bigoted emails condoning racially biased arrests and a deeply polarized community that's fostered in large part by the justice system. Cops, it says, are used to generate revenue through aggressive enforcement and overcharging, in the sense of charging people with more crimes than you normally would. Now, my question is, a couple of questions. Does Eric Holder have enough credibility among Republicans for any of us to take these allegations seriously? And is it possible for those of us on the right to separate the Michael Brown incident from perhaps a broader problem of racism in Ferguson? And really, should this report lead to greater scrutiny of police departments across the country?
Well, to your question as to do we have respect for Eric Holder, do we respect his opinion, the answer for me at least is no. He's done everything he possibly could in the last 6 years to destroy all of my confidence in the Department of Justice. So that being said about Eric Holder, I'll say this about public employees in general. Frequently, the barrier to keeping public employees held accountable for their actions are Democrats, because Democrats are the beneficiaries of union money. You go through the state of Missouri, you go through what unions, what public employee unions, what political money they gave to candidates, and I can guarantee you it's going to skew heavily to the Democratic Party. The mayor of Ferguson is a Democrat. If these people would do their jobs and keep the government employees that they employ under control, you wouldn't have a problem. But the problem that we have right now at the city and state level, and for that matter, you can throw in some federal agencies as well, is that these employees are bulletproof. And when you feel like you're bulletproof, you act like you're bulletproof, and you end up with not very good customer service.
Cruiser, let me throw this out, because John points out a great point, is that Democrats, whether they admit it or not, because the city council, when you run for city council in Ferguson, you run without identifying yourself by party, okay? But the city council, I think, is like 5 white people and 2 non-white people. Local black people control the population, in the sense they're 67% of the population, but they don't vote in the local elections. And then they go to the streets and protest when something happens in the police department that they could have had a part in shaping. Is this just a problem of, you know, the black folks in Ferguson, Missouri don't realize the power that they have? They're wearing the ruby slippers and they're not willing to click them together?
Well, I don't know if I would limit it just black folks in Ferguson, Missouri. I think an apathetic electorate is a big problem on every level in America right now. I think that's the power of the citizens in this country is still at the ballot box. And unfortunately, in a 24/7 media age, they see the protests, they see the riots, and they think, oh, that's the easiest way to get things done now. And I honestly did not think that this publicity first, investigate later Justice Department could have made a racial issue worse or more messed up than it was originally, or what they've done in the past. But they managed to, in this case, with, you know, basic, I don't know what the legalese for, well, he didn't do it, but he totally could have, is, but the Justice Department needed a win on this one. So I think they were going to find something. Had it not been the Holder Justice Department, back to your original question, Scott, I might have believed it more. I want to try to separate this still, and I think I'm going to try to separate this still, but I think they're just going to keep throwing stuff at the wall until it sticks. Michael Brown's family announced this morning, well, yeah, there was a thorough investigation at state level, at the federal level, but we're still going to file a civil suit. So they really want to make this thing happen, even though, and there were the credible witnesses who say that Darren Wilson was in the clear were afraid to go against the narrative. There's a long thing my friend John Sexton wrote over at Breitbart.com today about that.
All right, Cruiser, what do you have for us?
At the top of my rundown, the New Yorker praises Greg Gutfeld's run on Red Eye, inviting a discussion about the future of conservative political comedy. Gutfeld announced he would be leaving the show to develop a new weekend program for Fox News. Red Eye will continue with a different host. Now, John, this is a show you and I have both been on several times. We know Greg. It's a great job there. Having known him, having been on the show, do you think that this was like a one-off anomaly, that just because they let him do what he wanted to in the middle of the night with no scrutiny whatsoever, that's why it worked? And if we tried a little more mainstream push for someone right of center doing comedy, it would fly? Or was this an anomaly or a starting point?
Here's what I think made this show work. And you and I know the origins of this show.
Yeah.
It was Andrew Breitbart, who worked with Greg at the Huffington Post and print media, and had great admiration for him and his talent, saw that this guy had potential to do great things, and suggested to Fox News executives that Greg host this late night show. Fox News executives said yes. Greg got the show. And Red Eye, the first 2, maybe 3 years, was awful and unwatchable. It was a show that had a guy that had never done television before, that was learning through the process. He had a staff that was learning through the process. And you know what? Executives didn't watch it. So they let them work out the kinks, and they let them find their own, and they let the audience find them. And that show became a powerhouse. That show became a trendsetter. That show became an entity that gathered bigger numbers than primetime shows on CNN and MSNBC. That show became an institution, and they absolutely deserve all the credit in the world for that. But giving them the time to develop the show and make it work and figure out what worked, what didn't work, I think that was what gave it the recipe, the success that it needed.
And it got those ratings with virtually no promotional support from Fox News.
Yes.
So Fox News puts no Red Eye ads on, does not do anything to promote that show. I'd also
the quality of the show.
I'd also like to point out that after the first couple of dismal years, I made my first appearance in the 3rd year.
There you go.
That's how that goes. Scott, this article in the New Yorker talks about conservative comedy and asks why can't a conservative show, but why would a conservative show have to be done on Fox News? Why couldn't it be on Comedy Central? And I think one of the problems we have as conservatives when we start complaining about entertainment is we always ask, where's the conservative this or the conservative that or the conservative this? And wouldn't it be easier if maybe we just tried to brand some sort of entertainment without calling it conservative this or conservative that and just making it actually conservative?
Absolutely. And, I've only seen a couple of snippets of Red Eye. And, unlike most people on this show, I have not been a guest on Red Eye. So, 66% of the people on the rundown have been a guest on Red Eye. I have not. But I think Red Eye struck me more as a political or a news show that was done in an engaging, funny manner. The guilty pleasure and the truth is that most conservatives sneak clips of Comedy Central's Daily Show and other stuff because they are trying to do a comedy show. And I really don't think most conservatives are trying to do a comedy show. I would love to see that happen and say, you know what if we went for the laugh first, and if we happen to make a political point in the process, that would be awesome. But we don't want it if we can't make the political point. We don't want it if we just get the laugh.
Yeah, and Gutfeld would just be goofy sometimes for the sake of being goofy. A couple of points in closing on this. One of the other reasons it worked greatly is because there was balance on there. Gutfeld was very conservative. Bill Schultz, who did a lot of the writing in the early days, very liberal. Andy Levy, the other part of the triumvirate who started that show, was the libertarian there, and one of the few libertarians I know who actually understands what libertarianism is. So the balance was nice there. The other thing is I don't know if I've ever heard Greg Gutfeld call himself a conservative. Going back to what I just asked Scott, Gutfeld wasn't out there saying, I'm the conservative this, I'm the conservative. I don't think he ever called himself conservative.
That's right. And he was just an engaging host. He's a likable guy, too.
Fun dude.
Absolutely. All right, we wish Greg all the best. At the top of my rundown, the former governor of Maryland took some shots at Hillary Clinton. Martin O'Malley is likely to seek the Democratic nomination for president in 2016. He criticized the politics of triangulation that have been associated with the Clintons. O'Malley said during his speech, quote, "Triangulation is not a strategy that will move America forward. History celebrates profiles in courage, not profiles in convenience," end of quote. Now, here's what's interesting. If any of these people in the Democratic primary, whether it be Martin O'Malley or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, start to catch fire, Hillary Clinton is going to have to move to the left. If she moves to the left, she may have to end up running against her husband's record, welfare reform, balanced budget, saying the era of big government is over, as much as running against a Republican.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton was a brilliant pragmatist on that. You know, he would do the triangulation, and then he would take credit for essentially what was forced upon him, and he was absolutely brilliant at that. And this comes back to the problem with Hillary Clinton, is that she's got the name, and that's about it. She's got none of the charm. She's got none of the political chops. She doesn't run a campaign as well as he does. She's not engaging. She's not likable. And if it becomes this battle where he has to come out and suddenly it's the Clintons doubling down and having to be really close to each other, I don't even know if the young kids who weren't aware of the Lewinsky thing can buy that, because I don't think that they've been in the same house in probably 10 years.
Scott, if there's blood in the water, how aggressive do you see other Democrats getting with Hillary Clinton?
I mean, I think ultimately they would like her just to, have a stroke or something, or just quietly go away. But, when Cruiser was talking, I had this image of all of a sudden that we begin to see in magazines, snuggle photos of Bill and Hillary Clinton. I was like, ugh. I was reading a story today about this whole email thing with Hillary Clinton. It was interesting because there's an organization, I believe it's called Correcting the Record. And this organization exists merely to defend Hillary Clinton from attacks. And in their defense of Hillary Clinton's email situation, all they did was attack Jeb Bush. So correcting the record about Hillary Clinton simply meant saying, well, Jeb Bush had an email server at his house, and he used his private email as well. I think that Martin O'Malley may have a wedge here, an opportunity, because I think a lot of people are sick of the cynicism. They're sick of being part of a party that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't stand for anything except for getting elected.
All right. Scott Ott gets the last word today. That's going to do it for the show. Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruiser, joining me in Los Angeles, and Scott Ott in the Lone Star State. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.